all yours.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
My name is Lucas Charles. I'm a backend engineer on the secure team, and we are talking about air-gapped secure environments today. So, just give me 1 second to pull this up. All right, so for our meeting today, our plan is to go over what is in place for the current environment and talk about limitations and stuff. Does that sound right? Cool. Okay. Well, I will start screen sharing then. Okay. So for the demo environment, we went ahead and we set up a compute instance. Oops. Okay, so we have a GitLab air-gap test instance here, and we have a Bastion instance. So the idea here is that for the air-gapped instance, the only connectivity allowed on this instance will be SSH connections and traffic from the Bastion. Currently, we have that disabled because just for setting up things, it makes it a little bit easier, but ideally all traffic should flow through here. Now, if we take a look at the test instance, then we can check the network tags. There's a tag called air-gap host right here. Air-gap host is essentially disallowing all network traffic or egress traffic. And that is due to this firewall rule, disallow egress air-gap. This essentially is denying all traffic for all IP ranges, and it currently matches against the tag. Where is that tag? Yes, this one here, which is only matching the air-gap host. So let's go ahead and get on that host. How's this font size?
Visible.
Cool. That's all I can hope for. That's going a bit slow. I might need to up the resources on this, but that's okay. All right, so quick test.
I just have a quick question. Maybe you're going to answer that later. Why are we allowing all the traffic go to the Bastion host?
So the idea was that to get as close as we can to a shared air-gapped environment, we need to provide some way of accessing the primary host. And so what we could do and what we have done in testing is use some list. We could set up some firewall rules that basically allow Nginx access and SSH access, but I've had issues with UFW, namely Docker ignores the firewall entirely, which is fun. So the easiest thing seemed to be just disallowing all access on the host. but to use the host, we should interact with it somehow. So whitelisting a single IP instead of whitelisting everyone's IP who wants to interact with the host seemed like a tighter air gap.
Okay, so we're using the Bastion to connect to the air gap test environment. I have the feeling that you were connecting directly to it via SSH.
Currently, I'm connecting directly to it. So this firewall rule right now is just disallowing egress traffic from the host. Ideally, we should be going through the Bastion. I haven't gotten that set up yet.
Okay.
So currently, we don't really use a Bastion for anything, but I plan to. Namely, we'll connect over here to that one as well. Because that's somewhat relevant. I think that we should link both of these within a single network. Currently, they're using the default GCP network, but that way they're at least isolated from the internet to a specific network, and then these two can connect to each other. Okay, one more test here from the host. Cool. Okay, so this is essentially the script that I put together on the Bastion to pull over our analyzers. What this does is it iterates over the list of analyzers. It pulls them down because the Bastion has internet access and the host should not. It saves them and exports to a tar file, and then it adds write access to that. From there, we can SCP and copy these over from the Bastion directly to the air-gapped host, and then run a Docker load on the host. So this is the process that we recommend for actually getting the Docker containers onto the host. Cool. Okay. So this is still trying to connect up here, and it finally errored out, so we know that the host cannot access the internet. Cool. Here's this host here. This is running over HTTPS, and that is primarily it's bound to this internal cloud DNS resolver. So they should work within the air gap, just because it's easier to resolve to something rather than try and use the static IP. Within this, I've only uploaded a couple analyzers, so let's go ahead and start with the SAST one. Here's the ESLint analyzer. This is just the README file. So I just created this project to hold the containers. And there's not really any reason to actually reflect the way that we host containers. This is mostly just because it was a bit easier to set up this way. So within test JavaScript, and this is just copied over from our JS repo, so it's pretty straightforward JavaScript. I just simplified the Docker file, or the CI file a little bit here. I removed the QA jobs, added the analyzer image prefix, which points to the first half of that analyzer repo. Set the default analyzer to ESLint and disable Docker and Docker. There's one other job here, which is check air gap. And this is just to make sure that we are running a job that tries to reach out to registry and fails, and exit one if it actually reaches the registry. So this is our job demonstrating that the air gap is tight. All right, and let's just go ahead and start a new pipeline, which I thought I could do from this page, but I guess I can't. And because I have one runner, these need to run serially. So part of the configuration for this includes setting the pull policy on the runner to, is it pull when not present? Is that it? Pull policy if not present. So for that here, that's what's happening here, using the local image and not pulling it down. In this case, it ran through and it uploaded the report after the pipeline security tab. And if we check the running air gap job, this will eventually time out. Cool. Okay.
You had one question, Thomas?
Not yet.
Okay, I have one. So you are accessing the GitLab instance because you explicitly allow the HTTPS port from your own host. What makes you available to reach that target?
Currently, it allows any ingress traffic. You should be able to reach this as well. And we can lock that down more. Currently, I was just worrying about egress traffic. So that's why the current firewall rule only disallows outgoing traffic from the host.
Okay, it's outgoing. I'm sorry, I was not familiar with that. And then you didn't cut the difference between ingress and egress.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thanks. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, so we can reach in. It cannot reach out, so it can't pull from public repositories anything else, which is, I think, what we're looking for here.
And that's super convenient.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and in theory, I want to create this firewall rule for disallowed ingress as well, with the exception being this node is only accessible from the Bastion. So the idea being we will set up an SSH tunnel. And yeah, handy charts. So we go through our Bastion host and we can set up a port forward tunnel to actually forward 443 on the air gapped host. Actually, this would go, this one here goes here. But we expose port 443 on the Bastion host, which port forwards straight through to the air gapped host. And so all traffic to the air gapped host only goes through the Bastion. And then we just have a single input for the firewall rule to allow traffic between these two. But the Bastion host will be accessible to the internet, allowing us to do things like copy over the Docker containers from here to here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The other way that you could do this is set up, instead of like a Bastion host, is set up like a remote desktop, so that you remote desktop into a server, into like a Windows machine or a Mac machine or whatever. And so that would open up that port on a remote desktop port, but then your network's completely cut off other than that remote desktop port.
That makes sense, yeah. Yeah, I think that the thing that I'm not quite clear on is how exactly code gets loaded onto the environment in the first place. So the Quickstart guide that I opened this MR for, which is basically just setting up the entire air-gapped environment. The first step is something like install GitLab EE, and you like an apt install GitLab EE. So how that actual step works, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if that's someone runs on a hard drive and then hot swaps the hard drive in the air-gapped host, or we need to get more specific about that. But once that step is done, then you kind of need to just do that Docker save, Docker load, side loading containers over like SCP or something. So that's the only part that I think it's a bit outside our area right now. I don't think that we need to quite tell people how to do that, but okay. It's
Yeah.
still useful to figure that out, I guess. So that's
Yeah.
what I've been spending a lot of energy on. And if you missed that before, Seth, just
It's recorded.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. The current problem I was running into here, and this is mostly just because I don't know what I'm doing for dependency scanning. This one. Yeah, so I tried this, which is essentially disable the SSL verify, clone Gymnasium DB down in a before script, and then use DB local path here. And that's not quite doing what I hoped it would do, but.
I'm not quite sure the Gymnasium DB local path should be changed. I might be wrong. I'm not super familiar with this, but am I assuming this was just for configuring where we want to put the local clone in the image? Yeah. It's more useful when building the image itself, but I'm not sure it's considered at runtime. Yeah. But anyway, when that, thank you, by the way, thank you for trying out the dependency scanning. But I know we have some work to complete that because we have a lot of competing process between Gymnasium and the other analyzers. So it's hard to test them in isolation right now.
Yeah, and I definitely don't know enough about DAST to have tried that one, but I think Seth does, so.
Sorry, I didn't catch what the question was, or?
Oh, no question. I haven't actually tried setting up DAST here because I don't know how DAST works. So, yeah. Cool. So these credentials are in the team vault as well. I didn't bother creating anything that wasn't root, but here's the IP for the host that should be accessible. This is the internal DNS that will not work, but should work from the Bastion. And then I was playing with the third address, but don't worry about that.
Where did you put those? I know it's in a vault. Which vault did you put it in?
The team vault. I don't think I have access to anything other than the team vault. So there are sub vaults. I'm unaware of them.
So if I wanted to set up DAST, I could just go ahead and add a Docker image into, what was the name of your project where you're hosting the Docker images?
So currently I'm just storing them in individual projects. There's no real good reason for this. I did run into one issue that was just me playing around with. When you do a Docker push within here, then the sub path needs to match a project path for the registry because we don't have like group or instance level registries. So you could just push it to any one of these really. I just think that it's a bit easier to keep those separate. It may not be necessary.
Okay.
So that is just a single user. It's just a root user configured on this instance. So we maybe should avoid working all on the same user at the same time. This might cause issues, right?
I don't know of any issues it would cause, but that's a fair assumption. I did secure this already, so it's non-default password and new user signups are disabled, wherever that is. So this should be good. I don't really know how to create users through here. I've never had to do that before, but it's probably an option.
You also have a license for 1,000 users, so we could afford one or two.
Yeah, fair. And yeah, if you need to check the configuration, container registry is enabled here. And the shared runners is just the one runner running as a Docker service on the host, but restart always is set, so that should never go down. I'm going to reset this runner token real quick as soon as I navigate away from here, since we're posting this.
Do we all want to use this environment for demos?
If that's a question for me, then you're welcome to. I don't.
More a question for Olivier and Seth. So this is here. It's up in GCP.
Well, Seth already made the demos for that. So.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we got to do them live anyway. I don't know, but at least that's what I was hearing earlier today.
Do we have any more things we want to be part of the recording with regard to this setup? Like, I think we could have this conversation separately. Yeah. I'm just, what is the effort for you to put this together? My question is following up the one from Thomas, which is it easy to set up a similar environment for each team to be more autonomous, or should we make effort to work on the same one?
I think it's pretty straightforward, but I would be curious if other people think so. I think it would be actually. I would encourage it because I'm very curious if the Quickstart instructions where I capture that make sense. So if someone wants to follow those and see if they can spin one up, then cool. But if time is an issue, feel free to use this one.
How long did you spend setting it up?
A couple hours. Well, a full day for figuring out some things, but now that the instructions are together, I imagine a couple hours.
Where did you have those instructions? What was the?
Yeah, that's.
Was that in one of your private repos, or one of
no? I started a doc for add air gap Quickstart guide. It's linked to from the consolidate air gap specific notes around instance setup issue, which was this issue. Both links I threw in Zoom chat.
Okay, so if I take these instructions, I should be able to set up a similar environment.
Yes.
And do the live demo tomorrow.
Assuming it is tomorrow. Do they schedule it already?
I don't know. Okay, I mean, I'm fine trying this, and in the worst case scenario, I will just delegate to existing other demo that are not using that environment and make sure that we are, I mean, whoever will be responsible for doing the live session will be able to leverage such environments.
I might, in terms of getting something working, I think that this test Python project is close. I don't know what to do to get it working from there. So I might just try and get it working on the existing project. And maybe second step would be, or sorry, you need to use the IP address. But the second step would be trying to set up a dedicated one. But if time is a factor, I think this is close.
And we all agree that this environment is matching the requirements from the expectation of what it should be for our demo, right? This is similar to what we expect to be built by the QA team for the automated testing.
To be determined, having not seen the scorecard they're creating.
I mean, one of my criticisms would be that you're still accessing an HTTP host or HTTPS host, so it's not showing that it's locked down. That's why the proposal of using RDP or remote desktop, which is a completely different port than any kind of other communication might further illustrate that it is more air gapped. I think technically what we're saying is correct, but you know, that's just an area you could argue like, hey, you still have, you know, these HTTP ports open.
Can we have an audit log about what is incoming traffic or unblocked outgoing traffic so that it will help showing up that this is clearly preventing outbound calls? Is this something that the GCP platform allow us to look at?
Probably. I am not
It's
aware.
a maze. The GCP interface is a maze. I'm
Feature
always
rich.
lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, maybe one of the other options is that we access that the HTTP over just a strange port number that we just make up and say, hey, this is on port 9000. None of the software is programmed to access or use port 9000.
Reverse proxy on ingress.
Yep. And that way the egress obviously wouldn't know how to get out, right?
Yeah, that was my original plan. Was I have it bound to 8443 on, which probably isn't the most obscure port, but that's way on the Bastion. But I still haven't. If anyone wants to take a shot at throwing that Ssh Tunnel on there, or just change the default port. The only change in the default port, I want to double check on exactly how the runner is communicating with the host, with the Rails app, and see if that would explode.
Yeah, I think on the runner, when you configure the runner, it's just you have the URL in the port. So I would think that even if you change the port, it should be fine.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about, well, Seth, the way that I was interpreting it, you were talking about having a reverse proxy on the whole GCP project itself. And it can speak anywhere inside the project, as long as it doesn't try to go outside it, right?
Yeah, so we would have whatever port number, let's say it's 9000 going in, and then inside the network, you use regular port numbers. And that way, for example, if there's something that we forgot in the scanner that's trying to access out on port 80 or HTTP or HTTPS, that's not gonna work.
Right. Anything else?
That's all I can think of. I'll stop the recording unless there's more. All right.
Thanks, you, Lucas. Thanks
You're
a lot.
welcome. Yeah.